It's been a while since I've recorded what I'd describe as my normal type content for this YouTube channel or podcast. And as I've been sitting thinking about what I wanted to share, what I wanted to put out next, I've been stuck, to be honest. And I realised it was because it started to feel it wasn't authentic. Because one of the things I think anybody struggles with, if they're being completely honest, when they decide to go down this path of trying to help other people, writing books, doing YouTube channels, doing social media content, is that there's this desire to always portray that the work you've done and the work that you're trying to teach other people means that your life's absolutely fine, and where those people are trying to get to is where you are. And something I've realised is that when I'm coaching people one-on-one, that's not what it's like at all. Like, I share stuff about my life. It's one of the reasons I thought a while ago, did I want to qualify as a therapist? So I had a proper qualification behind me, because ultimately I don't have any qualifications in this stuff, and maybe that would help me, would help other people. And I realised one day when I was looking into it a little bit that therapists in the UK, at least, I don't know whether it's the same anywhere else, as far as my understanding goes, are not meant to share their own personal life with people. Like, they're not, there's a line there that they're not meant to cross. And something that I think my work, especially in coaching, is really, really powerful, is that I can do that. And I do. And I share as much as I can with the people I coach, and to let them know that they're not alone, to let them know that the problems that we all face are just problems we all face, and the only reason we think it's just us and we're alone is that everybody else isn't talking about it, and we're not talking about it out loud. Obviously we talk about it more than we ever used to, but it's still just the tip of the iceberg compared to what I see behind the scenes of the problems that everyone's facing. And if you're watching this or listening to this, you're having problems in your life, and I guarantee there are times when you feel like it's just you. So the problem when I put myself in the position that I'm in now, having written the last book and putting out the content and now creating an online course, is that there can be a perception, especially I've seen this in the wider world from people who don't know you closely and you don't have that one-on-one relationship with, that everything is all fantastic. And where that leads to is when you come to do content, for someone like me, when the whole point of this is for it to be authentic and for it to connect with you in a way that other stuff doesn't. And that can't happen unless I'm telling the truth to you. And something like it dawned on me just this morning when I was sitting home, I was thinking about what next videos to do, and there's all kinds of things I want to do that will help. Things like what stop people moving forward, what are the limiting beliefs, as the personal development world calls them, that stops you doing the things that can help you change your life. Things like, I've got no money, I've got no time, this won't work for me. This is all stuff I can talk about endlessly. And then other practical stuff, like it looks like we're in, if not heading into, another recession, and people will be struggling financially. And these are all things I can help with, from the psychological and emotional side of the work I do, back to when I used to be a lawyer, and I've got practical things that I can help people with. But as I sat and thought about all those different types of videos, none of them felt like the right thing to film or to record for you to listen to. And that's because my life isn't in a great place at the moment. And what I realised was that for this channel, for this YouTube channel, this podcast to be effective for you, even though I might never meet you, and I'm likely to never meet you and never talk to you, for it to be as effective for you as it is for my coaching clients, and I have very few coaching clients now because of things I'll go on to tell you about, I have to share this stuff with you as well. And the purpose of doing that, I've just been thinking about this before I started recording. What is the point? What is the purpose of doing this? And the purpose is, I never wanted to become one of those people who is sharing stuff online and they come across as a superhero. I used to see it all the time with the very high profile influencers and gurus and people in the personal development space. And I don't even think it's their fault. I don't think they mean to come across that way, but it can come across that everything's just great and they've nailed it. And even when they talk about problems, it's like, compared to the problems that you and I face, and I used to face and then did a lot of work on my life, we feel like, well, bullshit. Do you know what I mean? They're talking about things and we're like, well, yeah, all right, that's a little bit of a problem, but I've got no money and I can't afford to pay my mortgage and my relationship's in tatters and I've got these health issues and all these things. So it gets to the point where there's a disconnect between what they're talking about and our real life. So the purpose of this video is to share with you how, no matter how much of this work you do, we are all still humans. I've been doing this stuff now for 4 years, and I keep explaining to clients and people I work closely with who struggle to... Everyone goes through the same patterns. Everybody I've ever coached, and including me and the people I've learned from, tell me they've been through the same thing. We go through waves, and we go through patterns, and we go through cycles. That's just life. That's just the way nature works. And something everybody struggles with is the idea that you can start doing this work and you feel better. You feel so much better and you learn so much about yourself, and all of a sudden things make sense and things get to a place where it's great. And then things come crashing down again and it all falls apart and things aren't as great as they used to be, and you lose hope and you lose faith in everything because you think, well, what was the fucking point? I've been doing all this work. And something I tell people will say that to me after 8 coaching sessions. They've been doing this work for a month or 2 months. And I've been doing this work for 4 years now. And when I say I've been doing this work for 4 years, I've been obsessed by it and with it. I literally dedicated my life to it. So when my life crashed, if you don't know my backstory, go back to the first episodes of this podcast on YouTube and you can see it there, or you can see a much shorter version on the website. Those original origin stories were much longer than I intended for them to be, or it's in the beginning of the book as well, in the first 4 free chapters of the book if you want to read the longer version. But when I did that, I've lost track of what I was saying now. Isn't that fitting for an episode like this? I completely lost track of what I was saying. Not to go and watch some of it back to remind myself. We are all flawed human beings. That is going to be a theme of what I'm going to talk to you about. So when I go back to when my life crashed, this is 4.5 years ago, say, I just decided to dedicate everything to this. I got to a point where I was like, I was probably earning about 40 grand a year, doing consultancy work because I'd stopped being a lawyer, but I had a good skill. I had something that could make money, so I was doing consultancy work that was earning about 40 grand a year, and I basically, all the money that I needed to survive went there, and then everything else went into this, pretty much, other than, the odd night out and some stuff like that. I just dedicated everything to this, and I paid for a therapist and coaches and read books and studied things and watched countless YouTube videos and listened to podcasts. Anything I could get my hands on to learn, I did. And after doing that for a couple of years, I then decided that what I'd learned, I thought I could help other people, because I think what I'm really good at is bringing loads of complex information together and explaining it to people in a way that makes sense. That's something I've always been able to do. So I thought, I wonder if I can do that. So 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, at the start of the first lockdowns and pandemic, I started coaching people, which means that all that time I've been learning and developing. I was still seeing a therapist, I was still seeing coaches, and I was going through this stuff over and over again, coaching other people and teaching other people. And that's what led to me writing the book, which again makes you look at things in a different way. So my whole life for 4.5 years has been dedicated to this stuff. And that's why I wanted to share this, because it doesn't matter how much of this stuff you've done. And if you've done none of it, you're right at the beginning of this journey. Even if you're just watching these videos, you're right at the start. And you should give yourself credit for that, because lots of people who are having problems in their life don't even bother watching stuff like this or listening to stuff like this. So you are right at the start. But right up to where I am 4.5 years in of doing shitloads of this work, and then the people who are way ahead of me on the path, the people I've learned from, my mentors, my teachers, the people I look at online, we're all humans still. And the whole point of this is to share with you that I still struggle, and I still have struggles. And the reason I've been, you'll often see it, sometimes when I'm not doing content online, it's just because I can't be bothered and I've got other things I want to do. And the great thing about doing this work is it gives you freedom. Once your self-esteem is high, it gives you freedom to make decisions that you want to make. I listen to podcast makers and YouTube channel makers all the time, and they talk about, you have to get your shows out every day or every week or every month, or people forget about you, or all this nonsense. And it's bullshit. Don't get me wrong, there's obviously marketing things around that and algorithm things. That's a different conversation. But for the purposes you feel like you have to do something, that's because of low self-esteem, and that's because of external things that you can solve by doing this work. So often when I don't do any episodes, it's because of that. And at the same time, sometimes it's because I'm having shit in my own life. And when I'm going through shit in my own life, I don't feel like sitting and doing these types of episodes because it doesn't feel right. And the challenge that anybody in my position faces, and this came up, I was doing an intensive couple of days with a good client, a really good guy last week. And this came up with that. And I said to him, the challenge that you have when you're sitting in my position is finding a balance between sharing things so that people are inspired to move forward and think, well, that guy's changed his life, or that person's changed their life, so I can do it as well. And also sharing some of the shit. The problem I see is what we tend to do, and I'm guilty of this, is we share the shit after the event. So by the time I wrote my book, all of the stuff I was talking about in that had been problems in my life had happened years before, and I'd solved them. At the time I wrote that book, I had solved them. It was absolutely authentic. I was in a great place. I felt peaceful. I felt calm. I felt centered. Everything was going well. And when I shared that, that was the case. What happens next, as with all humans and all cycles and all patterns, is we inevitably go through problems in our own life live. And what I don't think I've ever seen, I was thinking about this again before I started recording, have I ever seen anybody who's high profile, not that I'm high profile in any way, but anybody who shares this stuff online, have I seen them in the moment talk about the problems they're in right there and then? And the answer is probably not. As I'm thinking about that, I can recall like Tony Robbins talking about issues in his business and stuff like that, but maybe he's gone past this point actually, where he's got no issues about his career and what he's doing. The problem when you're doing this stuff online is that there's a fear that if you share that you're in a dark place, or but things are happening to you that are still troublesome now, that it undermines everything that you're sharing. That it means that the stuff doesn't work and people will lose hope in it and lose faith in it. And that's something I've been wrestling with over the past few days. And where I've come to with it is, the whole point of me doing this is to help other people. Not to make loads of money, not to become a superstar, although if either of those two things happen off the back of it, great. But to help other people. And it comes to a point where if you're not sharing the stuff that's going on live, not oversharing, not sort of the dark Facebook, Instagram world of people pouring out everything that's happening in their day-to-day life, I don't think that is necessary. But if you're not saying when you're struggling and showing how you get through things live in the moment, I don't think it works anymore. It just stops being authentic. So that's what I wanted to share with you. This is, as you've already seen, going to be a bit of a rambling episode. But imagine we're just sitting talking and I'm just telling you what's going on. And I can then show you and tell you how when that happens, I deal with things using the skills and the tools that I've been learning for years. Because ultimately, that's the point in this. I say to everybody I coach, the point of this work is not that your life will then become perfect and there will be no problems. There will always be problems. There will always be challenges. The point of this work is to give you more skills, to give you more tools, to enable you to navigate the darkest parts of life. Because ultimately then, if you can get through those darkest parts, you can get back to the good bits. And one can't exist without the other. It's something I still struggle with at times when I'm in my darkest moments, is it looks like you're not going to get back to the light. It looks like you're not going to, and we desperately want to get there. It's why the personal development and self-help worlds, the traditional ones, are flawed in my eyes, because they're constantly trying to make us feel good. We want to feel happy and in love and at peace and joyful. And that's in the analogy of day and night, that's daytime. But we have to have nighttime. Nighttime is just as important as daytime. Think about what night is. I was in a bit of a dark spell last week, and because of the training I've done, because of the way I've been drilling this into me, even in the dark moment now, my brain said to me, it feels really dark at the moment. And the next thing that popped into my head was, and what happens in darkness? We rest. That's the whole point of the darkness. That's the whole point of the night. We rest at night, and then we get up in the day and we can do all the good stuff. So that's the point. And so to share with you what's been going on in my life, and it is waves, absolutely waves. There have been times in the past 4 years, lots of times when I have been absolutely flying in bliss, peaceful, doing everything I want to do. And then there are times, and I've been going back over my own journals and my own notes of the past few years to start to see my own pattern. And this is a really interesting thing to do if you've started doing the work. But even if you haven't, to start writing stuff down so that then you can start tracing how you operate. You can start seeing your own cycles and your own patterns. And mine's really, really clear. And this came up as well because I was chatting to a good mate last week who is in a similar space and does similar things and loves this work. And we were just both going through the same thing at the same time. And he said the same thing to me. Our cycle are pretty much the same, what we realised. And a few months ago, we were both absolutely flying. We were on top of the world. Think about it, the wave analogy. We're at the top of the wave. We're one of those surfers riding the crest of one of those huge waves that you see on TV. Unbelievable. And then after that, it just all fell down and crashed. And his story was pretty much exactly the same as my story. And what I realised was two things. One is that when I sat down and reflect on my life, I still work with my own coach. And this came up in one of our calls a few weeks ago, is that humans are not built to deal with everything we deal with every day in this modern world. If you've read my book, there's a chapter at the end where I talk about this crazy world and society that we've built, and it's just not fit for us. We're just not meant to be living in it. And when our systems are bombarded with too much stuff, we just can't handle it. And again, this is all scales. If you've listened to anything I've said before, it's not black and white. Think of this as scales. We're all at a different place on the scale. I, generally speaking, since I was a little boy, have been very, very sensitive. When I was passing through my life into what I call now the old part of my life, I started to bury that side of me because what I realised was it was too difficult for that little boy to survive in this world, feeling everything he could feel. Well, the problem I've got now is, as a 42-year-old man in a few days, I've reopened all of that sensitivity again, and I live in the world. I've been off travelling for lots of different parts of the last few years, which was me escaping and finding my own bubbles to live in. But now I'm back living at home and dealing with the world as it's been built. I struggle at times because there's just too much for me to deal with. And I literally sat down a few weeks ago, and this is something I'd recommend you do as well if you're having any struggles in your life, any problems in your life. I wrote down everything that I was having to deal with in one go. And I sat down with my coach one night and said to her, I just want to read all of this out to you. So I've said it out loud because I wrote it out on a list, just in like a list form, no detail. And then I put square brackets around every different distinct issue I was dealing with. And there's like 11 major life things I was dealing with. I had someone close to me had been diagnosed with cancer. I was in a new relationship, which is the first one I've been in since I left my marriage a few years ago, which was bringing up all kinds of things to deal with. I still got health problems that I've been working on for years now, but my pain was up and my tension was up, my stiffness was up. I had business issues because I was launching a new part of my business. I was pivoting again, and I was doing loads of work that I just don't really like doing, and that was taking all my time and I wasn't doing anything joyful. That led to me having money issues because I'd focused all of my attention on this new business that wasn't making any money and had gone away from other stuff. I was moving house. I don't have my own house. All these different things. And when I wrote it down, I was like, that's why you started to feel like shit. Because you can't possibly deal with all of this at once. And the second thing that comes up time and time again for me and for everybody I've worked with one-on-one is what tends to happen when we're going through these cycles is when we feel good, It's because we've been doing loads of the work and the things that get us into that place. And then once we start feeling good, we stop doing that work. It's exactly the same. The easiest analogy to make is with personal training and physical fitness, because I see this time and again with people, with myself again, and with others in personal training. You get really fit, you get in good shape, your diet's good, your exercise is good, you feel good. And then when you get there, your brain tells you you can switch off now. And then you start to drift again. And these are the cycles we all go through. And this episode isn't for that, but this ties into all of the work I do that you can see in other episodes and in the book. It's all about our personalities. It's all about our shadows. It's all about the stories we've been told and that we tell ourselves. It's all about the programming we've had since we've been kids. So when we start moving out of this place that we think we don't want to be in, and we get to a good place, our system wants us to go back to where we used to be, because that's where it feels safe. That's where it feels secure. That's where it knows it can meet our needs. To stay in the new place takes loads of work to begin with, because what we're actually doing is reprogramming our entire system. So we're trying to come up with a whole new life away from the old life by reprogramming things we've learned, usually for decades. Most people who come to work with me are at least in their 30s. There's the odd exception, a few younger people than that, and a lot older than that. I'm 42 now. I started doing this work when I was about 38. So I always say to people, I've got 38 years of programming in the old world compared to 4 years of programming in the new world. It's not until I'm 76 years old I'll have had the same amount of programming in the new world as I had in the old one. So we're constantly up against that old stuff. And unless we keep the work going, we are going to dip. And that's what's happened to me recently. I was absolutely flying a few months ago. The best I have ever felt. There was a few months in the run up to Christmas. The best I have ever felt. Literally felt like I was walking on air. Was phenomenal. Everything was going well. Attracted a new partner into my life. Was madly in love. Business was going really well. I was loving my family. My health felt good. I felt physically well. My pain and tension had drifted. It looked like I was about to just heal completely from the illnesses I've been dealing with for years now. And then, well, actually, where we got to was I wanted to build an online course. So I hosted a 3-day live event where I could teach people all of this stuff intensively in 3 days, because I realized I like to reverse engineer stuff. If you've read my first book, you'll know all about that, about changing career. And I like to reverse engineer stuff. So one day I realised, if I want to turn this stuff into a course to help more people at a lower cost, because coaching can be really expensive and out of most people's price range, I need to turn it into a course. And what I realised was, if I coach you for 1 hour a week for 6 months, that's about 24 hours of coaching. And if we do 3 8-hour days, that's also 24 hours of coaching. So I took a small group of people and I coached them for 24 hours basically over 3 days. And it was incredible. I absolutely loved doing it. The people in the room absolutely loved it. It was a phenomenal weekend. And I knew, because something I'd started doing even before this spell was knowing that the thing about waves is, once you start spotting these patterns, you can prepare for them. So when you're on the top of a wave, a story I'd started telling myself was, after the crest of the wave, you come down, you crash on the other side. Well, guess what? If you tell yourself the story, you're going to crash all the time. Of course, that's what's going to happen. And what I realised was, that's not what happens in real life. To the top surfers, if we use that analogy, they surf these huge waves, then they ride the wave back down to shore, they jump off their surfboard and they go and rest. And that is what we all need to try and do, me included. Another purpose of this is to show you that no matter how long I've been doing this for, I still make the mistakes that other people I teach and coach make, and you will make, no doubt. This is not an if or a maybe. You will make these mistakes. We all do, and I don't care how long you've been doing it for, people still go through these problems. So when I went into doing that 3-day weekend, that 3-day course, I was like, I know afterwards I'm going to need to rest. So I built in a week off, because I was like, I'm going to use so much energy and I'm going to be riding a wave, and afterwards I'm going to need to rest. So using that analogy, I'm going to need to come back down to shore, get off my surfboard and just chill out for a bit, which is what I did. That was fantastic. At the same time, all this other stuff's going on in my personal life, which I wasn't really dealing with because I was focusing on this other stuff. And then what I went into was a phase of building an online course, which meant for me sitting behind a laptop for hours and hours every day, processing videos, doing admin, dealing with tech stuff, which is really frustrating. My Mac isn't set up to deal with that sort of stuff, so it was slow and the internet connection was slow and all this stuff that was frustrating. And it took me weeks to realise it wasn't good. I was spending too much time doing things that weren't good for me. And a coach I used to work with years ago spends a lot of time talking about that stuff, about how we need to be doing more of the things. This ties into the multiple personality work that I do, where we need to meet our needs in healthy ways. We need whatever those needs are. The four core ones being certainty and control, uncertainty and variety, significance and love and connection. If we're not meeting those needs in healthy and conscious ways by doing this work, our systems are going to meet them for us. And that's what starts happening. Old dark characters come out, old issues come up, and slowly over time, you just drift back to where you used to be without even realizing it. And I'll pull myself up on that because another coach taught me once, which I loved. The whole point of this stuff is we never go back to where we were before. And that's really important to remember. So if you're doing this work and you've been through anything and you've been through cycles and you think I'm struggling, your ego will want to tell you that all the work you've done has been pointless and you should just scrap it. And that's because it wants to keep you where you were before. The truth is, you're looking at the same problem from a different position now. So the analogy I like to use for that, to picture it, is imagine you live in a tower and the windows are all facing one direction, but you go up a spiral in the tower. So every time you come back to the same view, you think you're back in the same place, but you're not. You're in the same place and you can see the same view, but from a higher level. And that's what this work does. You might come back and think, I'm back to just where I started, but you're not. You're back to where the same viewpoint, but a higher level. Think of it like a computer game, one of my favorite analogies now. You go through the game and you get better as you go through. But guess what? Every time you get better, the game gets harder. So now you've got to deal with harder stuff and you've got to learn the skills that deal with that. And that is the cycle that we all go through. And it's the cycle I'm going through now. So when I sat down to record some new episodes for this show, I thought, this is what I need to talk about. This is the most important bit. Over the past probably 2-3 weeks now, there have been times where I almost as darker places before I started this work. Not quite as dark, but just moments where it's been like crushingly low. I'm feeling like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. One of the things that a pattern that I still am trying to break from my old life is money, financial issues and carrying debt from the past and trying to move forward and trying to get out from under it. And often we'll just feel like we're under a mountain. And one of the things I wanted to talk about in another episode, but wanted to talk about this first, was helping with debt issues, because when we go into recession, so many people will struggle with that and won't know what to do. Again, loads of the skills I've got from an old life really helped me with that stuff, and still I struggle with it. So I will share that in another episode if that will be helpful to you or to anyone else you know. And I just had a moment, like I collected a load of posts from loads of my posts still goes to my parents because I move around a lot. And my mum even said to me, I hope there's some good news in there for you. You deserve it. You've been working really hard. And I laughed to myself and thought, there won't be, because it'll just be people asking me for money. And I sat down this morning and opened all of those letters, about 7 letters, and every single one of them was another company asking me for money. And I just literally got to the point where I just burst into tears. And this is the point of this work, is that how do we get back out? So when we go to a dark place, when we go into the night time, what do we do next? And this is where something I'm really pleased with whenever I go into a dark place is that the skills I've got that I've been practicing for so long now are becoming more second nature. And I still struggle. That is the truth of it. There are still times I really struggle. And at the same time, those skills really help me, because even things as simple as, I know you'll have heard people say this in the general Twitter world and online world, reaching out for help and getting in touch with someone. I got to a point last Friday, something happened in my life that just wiped me out. It was like I felt like I'd been hit by a train, and I got up the next day, and I just, firstly, I didn't get up. Actually, I stayed in bed. So this is point one of the work that I share and I do now, is feel your emotions. So whatever's happening, if you're depressed, if you are sad, if you are full of self-pity, if you are bitter, whatever it is, just feel the feeling. There is nothing wrong with those feelings. I lay in bed last week, and I'll often just ask my own system questions and see what answer instinctively comes up. Don't think about it. This is key. Once we get inside our heads, we're trying to figure out the answer, figure out what the right answer is. Go with whatever comes up. And since I've been doing all this work, I've become really good at that. I just ask my system a question and something pops up. That's generally the right answer for us. And I asked myself a series of questions and nothing came up. Big questions. And I realised it was because I felt depressed. And when I feel depressed, I can't feel this stuff. It's just blocked. And I know from experience that when I feel depressed, the best thing I can do is feel depressed as much as I can. So I lay in bed, I pulled the covers over my head, and I stayed there. I fell back asleep, and I allowed myself to be depressed, because it's just a feeling that will pass. And as I've learned in the past, and I've seen in my old life, and I've seen repeatedly since, a couple of hours later, that feeling had passed because I allowed it to process, and then I could get on with my day. And then comes the next part. And this is a key bit that's really, really crucial and difficult. Again, even after so many years of doing this work, I still find this difficult, is finding a balance between feeling our emotions and not wallowing in them. So if we start to wallow in them, then it becomes unhealthy again. If in the multiple personality work, it's another character that's trying to keep us trapped in the life we're in by keeping us in this darkness. So what we want to do is allow ourselves time to process the emotions. There's loads of different ways you can do that. I'll talk. This is all in the book actually, and I'll say it now because in case I forget later. If you're watching this and you haven't read my book and you want a copy, you can have a copy for free. The whole point of this stuff is to help as many people as I can. So you can have a copy of the book, an online copy of the book for free. I can send you a PDF version. Send an email to questions@paul7cope.com. I'll put a link underneath the show as well. If you can't afford the book and you need help and you think this stuff will help you, just send me an email and I'll send you a copy for free. Because there's all kinds of stuff in there about how to process our emotions. And then once we've done that, move on. And the key to moving on is to sit down, and this is what I did myself, with a pen and paper, write down everything that's going on in your life. Write down all of the different challenges, all of the different problems you're facing, and to break it down one at a time. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop it. When we feel so dark and we feel so underneath the world, it feels like we're under a dark cloud or there's a huge mountain over us that we just can't get out from under. And the way to get out from under that, the way to get that dark cloud to go away, the analogy I used to give is start poking holes in it. Because if you just poke one hole in a dark cloud and let some sunlight through, at least you can see the sunlight. And then you just poke one more hole, and you don't need to get rid of the whole dark cloud at once. We just go one step at a time. So when you're in that place, don't think, I need to feel peaceful and happy again. Just think, what's the first step I can take? And that first step for me last week was reaching out to my old therapist who I hadn't spoken to for 6 months and a coach who I work with to say, can we speak? I'm struggling and I need someone to speak to, because even after doing this stuff for so long, when you're inside your own head, it's hard to get out of there and it's hard to see what's really going on. So to have someone external to help you with that is really good. Now, this is a key bit that I've talked about loads of times in the past. If you can, everyone will always say to you, just speak to anybody. And I fundamentally do not believe that that is a good idea. And I saw this even on Friday with the best will in the world. I won't name who it was, but I decided to reach out to my old therapist and to a coach who I know are, my therapist is years ahead of me with this work. And I trust him implicitly and I've worked with him for years. I just haven't spoken to him for ages. And my coach, who is in a similar place to me and has done loads of this work and understands it implicitly. So I trust them to be able to help me. If you just speak to anybody who doesn't know how to help you properly, there is a decent probability that they will make things worse. But not intentionally and not because they want to, but because they don't know how to help. Now, if you just need to speak to someone out loud and get something off your chest, that's great. Do it. This is not me telling you not to do that. That would be dangerous. If you need to just speak to someone, speak to someone. At the same time, if you can speak to someone who knows what they're talking about, do that. Because the ability, the training that those people have had to be able to hold space for you, to say what you need to say, to not judge you, and then to offer guidance if you need it, is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. Now, again, there is a financial element to this. I appreciate for everybody. And sometimes you just won't be able to afford to go and pay to see a therapist or go and pay and see a coach. In that case, I would do things like watch YouTube videos, read books, write stuff down. Because at least then, especially with the YouTube videos and books and podcasts, if it's people who you can trust, who know what they're talking about, you're hearing good information from people that can help you, from people who know what they're talking about. It happened in my life last week. I reached out to my therapist, my old therapist, and a coach, managed to speak to the coach that day, which was amazing and priceless. And that helped me feel better straight away. I'm not seeing my therapist until tomorrow as I record this, but already feel better and I've been moving through things. At the same time, I spoke to people close to me and just mentioned a couple of things to them. And if it wasn't for the work I've done, and if it wasn't for the fact I'd already reached out to my coach and therapist, I'd have felt worse from speaking to the people close to me because they don't know how to help. So often what people will do when you tell them about something, in my experience anyway, this might be different in your life, so go with whatever works with you, is they'll just make it about themselves. That's often what people do. If you tell something to someone who's close to you, who worries about you, something that's bad, in inverted commas, going on in your life, they will start to worry, and then it becomes about them and how much they're worried, and that's the last thing you need when you're already in a place where you're struggling. You don't want to start worrying about how you're affecting other people. If you've got people in your life who you know are good and they can handle this stuff, great, speak to them, whether that's friends, family members, whoever. But the key is to do whatever works for you and to take one step at a time. So that first step is crucial. Whatever that first step is, back away from thinking you need to solve this all at once. All you need to do is take one small step. That's what I do in my own life after all this time. I just sit down, I write it all down, because when it feels like that big cloud, it's like, actually, what's the big cloud made up of? The big cloud is made up of loads of little things, usually. So let's write down all the little things. And sometimes it's made up of some big things as well. Like, think of my list before. There are some big topics on that list. But then even with that, I can go, right, well, what are the little things I can deal with? What are the little things I've got the energy and the strength to deal with right now? And then on the big things, let's narrow it down. What are my priorities? Because as I said before, I just don't think humans are built to deal with all of the shit that we're bombarded with all the time. So is there something, for example, when this happened to me a couple of months ago, the first thing on my list, I was like, a house move was a big thing. I was like, well, actually, I can do the house move and then it's off my list. So it's gone. Whereas, you know, a person close to me having cancer, that's going to stay for a while. There's nothing I can do about that. So let's deal with the thing I can actually deal with. Let's take control of the thing I can actually take control of, deal with that, and then let go of the rest. And then slowly we start to make progress. And as we make progress, we feel better about ourselves. This is all back to the self-esteem thing. Our self-worth improves as we take steps forward. Does that make sense? And then the key to remember, which is the ultimate overriding point of this episode, is that we are all going through the same stuff. Everybody I know, everybody I've ever met, one of the blessings and curses of doing this much work, and this goes back to intuition, back when I was a little kid, I've always been able to see stuff in people, is I can often see in someone when they're struggling, even when they don't say it. So I'll see them working really hard, I'll see them drinking a lot, I can feel it from them. And it's tough. The comforting thing for all of us when we're in a dark place or we're struggling is to know that everybody else feels the same way sometimes. On a scale, you know, some of us struggle more in the world than others. Some of us are more sensitive than others. That's just the way it is. It's important that as you start going through this work, you realise you're not alone. you realise you're just like everybody else. We are all flawed human beings. And then start looking at your life and creating ways and finding ways to make it better and to make it easier to cope with. So, for example, something I've realised in the past few weeks is I'd stopped using social media altogether. One of the things I'd done in my business was bring someone into work for me who could then do all my social media stuff, so I didn't have to touch that world at all. That created issues in a different way that I then had to deal with, which one of the problems I have, which this may resonate with you, is I get most frustrated with myself when I repeat mistakes from the past. And that's something I'm constantly trying to learn from and write them down and figure out ways to not repeat the same mistakes. And this ties into this other point, which is what is leading to me feeling the way I'm feeling. And one of the big things I realized a few months ago was social media. Every time I went on social media, especially Twitter, I would observe how I felt. And what I realized was I'd only need to be on for 5 minutes, maybe not even that long. And I'd feel angry, I'd feel anxious, I could feel myself getting all worked up. So I stopped using it. And then a few weeks ago, my football team got to a Champions League final, and I started just going back on to look at what was going on. And it got me back in the loop of going on Twitter every day. And that tied in to me feeling like shit in my day. So all of these things, the step-by-step thing, out the other side of this, I sat down and I was like, right, I've slipped backwards. I've not been doing my own work, the stuff I talk about all the time. I've not been doing it enough. I still do some of it, but it's like the physical trainer thing again. I'd gone from being a marathon runner who was super fit and doing loads of great work to just sort of doing a little bit of exercise every now and then. So I was like, right, I need to get back and start doing my work every day. And I sat down and I created a routine for myself, because that's something that, since I've changed my life, I'm not good with routine, and routine helps me. So I sat down and I created a routine. Physically, for me, I'd not done any exercise for a long time, and I realised I need to feel physically fit to feel well. I go back to, this is something else good, which is good to do if you keep a journal and write things down every day. How do you feel? What's going on? You can read back over it, and then you can think, well, when was I last in a really good place? How did I get into that place? And then just replicate what you did to get back in that place. So things for me, when I was thinking about where was I before Christmas, where was I early this year, and it's very basic things like I was having a bath most days, which is something I never used to do. But for me, just sitting in a bath and calming down and chilling out and switching off all the social media and then listening to a good book that I really like. So there was a YouTube talk I was listening to at the time that was talking about, ways to make your life better, and books like Letting Go by David Hawkins, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, depending on what you want to do at the time and what your focus is on. By doing that, I knew it made me feel better. Going outside regularly, walking with my bare feet on the grass or in the sand, helps you connect with nature again. These things are all crucial to me. What I'd suggest is find your things, whatever works for you, and then start to implement them. Because something, and again, this is the beauty of like going back to old things. As soon as I start listening to a book I was listening to last time I felt good, it reminds me why it helped me, because it reminds me of this stuff. We all want to change our lives, but nobody wants to change what's happening in our lives. And the only way we can change our lives is to change the things we're doing every day. And we can just do that one small step at a time, and then just keep up the new habit. So whatever it is, remember, like when we sit, make a conscious choice, stop bullshitting ourselves. These are themes I talk about constantly. When we sit and think, I want my life to change, I want something to get better, we'll then say to ourselves, well, what are we doing about it? Because I'd be sitting there thinking, I want my life to get better, I'm feeling a bit low. And I think, well, I haven't been outside today. I haven't done any exercise today. So I've started now, just for the past few days, getting up a bit earlier than I used to, set my alarm, get up before anything else is starting, do some exercise, do some stretches, do some meditation. Straight away then I feel better before the day has even started. So I'd strongly recommend that you sit down, create your own routine, figure out what works for you. When were you last in a good place? When did you last feel like the world was going well? If you can't think of that, then start thinking about the way you want your life to be, and start thinking about someone you know whose life is the way you want it to be, and start figuring out what you need to do on a daily basis, the small things to move forward. What's the first step you can take? As soon as you've listened to this, as soon as you've watched this, don't dick around, don't waste any time. Take one step that helps you move forward. And then, back to the whole point of this, remember, that even when we've made progress, even when we've done loads of this work, we are still going to struggle at times. We are still going to find that there are dark times in our lives. And that's when the training really comes in, because that's when we need to figure out how to move forward and how to get out from under those clouds. I hope that all helps. As I say, if you can't afford the book and you want a copy of the book because it will help you, send an email to questions@paul7cope.com and I'll happily send you a PDF copy of it. You can read and you can go through all the exercises. If you are struggling and you need to reach out, get in touch with me, send me an email and I'll help as much as I can. I hope that helps. Take care of yourself. See you soon.